Throughout the mid-20th century, the United States turned inward, cementing its cultural, economic, and military hegemony. In this era of supreme confidence, the U.S. exported its own homegrown sports, baseball, basketball, and American football, to the rest of the world, reaping the financial and cultural rewards of its sporting superiority. The concept of world champions was coined to describe winners of American domestic leagues, an assertion of dominance that worked seamlessly in isolation. Within this landscape, soccer faced severe psychological, cultural, and structural roadblocks. To understand the deep-seated disdain for the sport among many traditional American sports fans, we have to examine a few core pillars of the American sporting psyche. First, American sports are built on relentless, quantifiable action. Consider American football. Every 10 to 15 seconds, a distinct play occurs. The team either gains yards, loses yards, or turns the ball over. This incremental progression allows for constant stat tracking, analysis, and instant gratification. Baseball and basketball operate on similar principles of frequent, measurable events. Soccer, by contrast, requires teams to possess the ball for several minutes, building an attack methodically while passing backward and sideways. To an American audience accustomed to rapid progression, a sequence of sideways passes in the midfield registers as nothing happening. The sport is one continuous 45-minute play, lacking the start and stop rhythm that allows fans to easily digest and dissect data. Furthermore, American sports fans are addicted to high scores and definitive winners. American culture values the killer instinct and clear, immediate victory. Soccer, conversely, is characterized by low-scoring games, where a 1-0 result is often considered the pinnacle of tactical perfection by European fans. More shockingly to Americans, a game can end in a draw. The concept of playing 90 grueling minutes just to end in a tie, or playing for a 0-0 draw as a valid strategic choice, fundamentally violates the American demand for a definitive result. It is also impossible to discuss the popularity of American sports without mentioning television. The National Football League and other American leagues are intrinsically tied to broadcast television, where advertising revenue dictates the flow of the game. American football is perfect for television because the continuous stoppages allow for endless commercial breaks, halftime shows, and instant replays. Soccer offers no such luxury. The 45-minute halves cannot be interrupted for commercials without destroying the rhythm of the match. For major American television networks, broadcasting a sport that offered so few guaranteed advertising windows was a massive financial risk, leading to a historical lack of network buy-in. Beyond financial reasons, during the height of the Cold War and the ensuing decades, soccer was viewed by many conservative and traditionalist Americans as an un-American sport, largely because it was embraced by the rest of the world while the U.S. excelled at its own games. There was an element of sporting hubris embedded in the rejection of soccer. Furthermore, cultural attitudes toward the game sometimes framed it as lacking the raw, physical machismo of American football. The perception of soccer players as prone to diving, feigning injuries, and rolling around on the pitch also severely damaged the sport's reputation in the eyes of American audiences, who prized the toughness of athletes playing through pain. Because Americans are accustomed to being the undisputed global leaders in almost every facet of life, it became difficult to accept that the rest of the world was better at a sport than them. In soccer, the U.S. men's national team rarely contended for the World Cup. Since American sports fans take pride in their champions being the best in the world, the inability of the U.S. to dominate the global soccer landscape contributed to a general apathy toward the sport. Despite the cultural resistance, soccer did not die entirely. It merely evolved into a traveling spectacle designed to capture the American imagination. In the 1970s, the North American Soccer League attempted to force-feed the sport to the American public through gimmicks, star power, and made-for-TV events. The epicenter of this movement was the New York Cosmos. In a brilliant stroke of marketing and sports diplomacy, the Cosmos signed legendary Brazilian superstar Pelé in 1975. Pelé's arrival in the United States was a watershed moment. For a brief period, soccer became a glamorous, high-profile event. The Cosmos Games at Giant Stadium drew massive crowds, attracting celebrities, media attention, and a newfound curiosity from the American sporting public. However, the league's strategy was inherently flawed. The league relied heavily on aging European and South American stars coming to the twilight of their careers for a hefty paycheck, rather than investing in a sustainable youth development system or organic domestic talent. The rules were even altered to appeal to American tastes. Games could not end in ties, leading to the infamous shootout tiebreakers where players would dribble toward the goalkeeper in a one-on-one scenario. Ultimately, the league expanded too quickly, spending exorbitant amounts of money on international talent that the domestic audience could not sustain. By the mid-1980s, the league had collapsed. The Pelé experiment proved that Americans loved a spectacle, but it failed to transform soccer into a deeply ingrained cultural staple. If the 1970s were about spectacle, the 1990s were about laying the concrete foundation for the future of American soccer. The turning point for the sport in the United States was syringes with the 1994 FIFA World Cup. When FIFA awarded the hosting rights to the United States, traditionalists and sports journalists were deeply skeptical. The tournament was viewed by many global fans as a risk, a venture into a country that did not care about the beautiful game. Yet, the 1994 World Cup was a staggering, unprecedented success. Despite the initial apathy of mainstream American sports media, the tournament broke attendance records that still stand today. Millions of Americans, exposed to the sheer pageantry, drama, and global scale of the tournament, were captivated. The 1994 World Cup served as a crash course in soccer fandom for the American public. Crucially, one of the conditions set by FIFA for the United States to host the World Cup was the creation of a new, sustainable top-tier domestic league. Thus, Major League Soccer was born. The league's early years were undeniably difficult. The U.S. sporting landscape was incredibly crowded, and Major League Soccer had to fight for media attention, sponsorships, and stadium space against the NFL, NBA, MLB, and NHL. To survive, the new league had to adapt to the American franchise system. Rather than adopting the traditional global model of independent, community-owned clubs with promotion and relegation, the league operated as a single-entity structure, with salary caps and no relegation. While this system was initially criticized by global soccer purists for being anti-meritocratic, it provided the vital financial stability the sport needed to survive in a ruthless American corporate sports environment. Over the decades, Major League Soccer transformed from a struggling startup into a robust, rapidly expanding empire. The league shifted its strategy from importing aging stars to focusing on youth development, establishing robust academy systems, and becoming a respected league that develops young domestic talent and attracts high-quality international players. While the men's national team struggled to capture the imagination of the global soccer community, leading to criticism and declining approval sentiments, a completely different narrative was unfolding on the women's side. The U.S. women's national team did not just participate in global soccer, they dominated it. The history of women's soccer in America is one of unparalleled success, winning multiple World Cups and Olympic gold medals. The success of the women's national team fundamentally altered the perception of the sport in the United States. Because Americans are culturally conditioned to expect their teams to win, the women's team provided the perfect vehicle for national pride. When they won the first FIFA Women's World Cup in 1991, and subsequently hosted and won the iconic 1999 World Cup, they became household names. The image of Brandi Chastain celebrating her penalty kick in the 1999 World Cup final is etched into the annals of American sporting history. The rise of the women's national team achieved something crucial. it made soccer culturally acceptable for girls and boys alike. The team produced legendary figures who became global icons. By providing a winning team, they answered the American desire for dominance in sports, allowing the U.S. to take pride in being the absolute best in the world at the beautiful game. The success of the women's team also spurred massive investment in youth soccer, creating a generation of American athletes who grew up with the sport as a primary athletic pursuit rather than an alternative. If the 1994 World Cup and the creation of Major League Soccer laid the foundation for soccer's survival, a massive demographic and cultural shift in the United States became the engine of its explosive growth. The myth that America does not like soccer usually stems from an outdated view of the American population. Historically, sports fandom in America was dominated by a monochromatic demographic. However, the United States has undergone a profound transformation. Decades of immigration from Latin America, Africa, Europe, and Asia brought millions of people to the U.S., who already possessed a deep, generational love for football. These immigrant communities transformed the sporting landscape. Cities with growing Hispanic populations, for example, saw the organic growth of Sunday leagues, vibrant supporter cultures, and packed stadiums for international friendlies. The demographic diversity of the U.S. meant that soccer was no longer a foreign import, but a reflection of the evolving American identity. Moreover, the popularity of the sport was propelled by its accessibility. Unlike American football or baseball, which require expensive equipment, specialized gear, and large, dedicated facilities, soccer requires very little to get started. A ball and 2 makeshift goals are all that is necessary. This accessibility made soccer immensely popular in youth programs across the country, particularly in diverse and urban communities. As a result, soccer boasts a distinctly different audience profile than traditional American sports. While the traditional American leagues skew older, soccer has captured the youngest, most diverse fan base of any major sport in the United States. The demographic that consumes soccer in America is largely made up of Gen Z and Generation Alpha, groups that view sports through a fundamentally different lens than their parents. This generation is less tied to traditional broadcast television, less concerned about constant commercial breaks, and more connected to global sporting culture. For a young American growing up in the modern era, supporting a European club like Real Madrid, Arsenal, or Bayern Munich is as common as supporting a local Major League Soccer team. Soccer's growth in the U.S. is not just about the sport breaking through, it is about the rise of a generation that values the fast-paced, fluid nature of football. Another massive, often overlooked driver of soccer's explosion in the United States is the digital revolution. In the past, American sports journalists and major networks controlled what sports fans were exposed to. European or South American soccer leagues were inaccessible, broadcast only occasionally on obscure channels or delayed for days. Today, the internet and streaming platforms have entirely demolished this barrier. A teenager in Texas can watch Lionel Messi play for Inter Miami on their smartphone, track Erling Haaland's goals in the English Premier League, and watch the U.S. national team, all within a matter of minutes. Social media platforms like TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube have made global soccer culture instantly accessible to American youth. This universal availability has created a highly soccer-savvy generation of fans in America. Fans are no longer confined to just following American leagues, they are engaging with the highest level of elite football on a daily basis. This exposure to elite play has increased the appreciation for the tactical nuances, technical skill, and dramatic tension of the sport. Consequently, the traditional American complaint that soccer is boring or low-scoring has faded for younger generations, who instead view the game's tactical battles and moments of individual brilliance as thrilling. Furthermore, the rise of soccer-specific media, podcasts, and digital content creators has built a vibrant, community-driven soccer culture in the U.S. Fans no longer just watch matches, they participate in a global digital conversation. This digital integration has fostered a sense of belonging and community that rivals the long-established traditions of European football culture. As we look at the modern landscape, the transformation of American soccer is no longer just a cultural movement, it is a booming corporate and sports industry. The growth of soccer in the United States is supported by billions of dollars in investment, groundbreaking stadium infrastructure, and record-breaking media deals. Over the last decade, billionaires, international investment funds, and major sports conglomerates have poured capital into American soccer. Domestic franchises are now valued in the hundreds of millions, and in some cases, over $1 billion. Owners are constructing state-of-the-art, soccer-specific stadiums in the heart of major cities, moving away from the cavernous, half-empty football stadiums that plagued the sport in the 1990s and 2000s. This financial boom has allowed the domestic league to attract younger, high-profile talent from South America and Europe, positioning the league as a premier destination for developing players before they make the jump to Europe, or as a competitive league for veterans. The presence of global superstars like Lionel Messi in the league has taken the cultural profile of soccer in America to astronomical heights, drawing massive celebrity attendance, record merchandise sales, and unprecedented global viewership. Additionally, the United States has shifted its focus from merely developing youth players to cultivating elite professionals through world-class academies. Professional clubs have established academy pipelines that mirror European models, emphasizing early identification, intensive holistic training, and integration into professional first teams. The result is evident on the global stage. American players such as Christian Pulisic, Weston McKennie, and Tyler Adams are starring in top European leagues, proving that American athletes can succeed at the highest levels of the sport. This export of talent back to Europe has garnered international respect for American soccer, further validating the sport to the traditional American sports fan who demands global excellence. The transformation of soccer in the United States is one of the most fascinating sports stories of the past century. What was once viewed as an un-American, niche activity rejected by the traditional sporting establishment has evolved into one of the fastest-growing and most lucrative athletic pursuits in the country. The rejection of soccer by older generations of Americans was rooted in a combination of sporting hubris, cultural isolation, and a distinct preference for the stop-and-start, statistically driven, high-scoring rhythm of traditional American sports. However, globalization, massive demographic shifts, the digital revolution, and the unparalleled success of the U.S. women's national team tore down these barriers. Today, the United States is one of the most vital and rapidly expanding frontiers for the beautiful game. The sport is young, diverse, and deeply embedded in the lives of the newest generations. With massive, unprecedented investments, world-class academy pipelines, and a booming domestic league, the stigma against soccer has largely evaporated. As the United States hosts monumental global soccer tournaments, the sport is poised for another seismic leap in popularity and infrastructure. The days of America hating soccer are firmly in the past. The nation has finally embraced the beautiful game, not by abandoning its own sporting traditions, but by making soccer uniquely its own. The sleeping giant of the sports world has not only woken up, but it is stepping onto the pitch with the rest of the world. And that concludes our deep dive into the history of American soccer here on Pitch Report. From the immigrant fields of the 1920s to the glittering stadiums of the modern era, the beautiful game has truly conquered America. What do you think is the future of soccer in the United States? Will the men's national team finally become a legitimate contender on the global stage, or will the women's team continue to carry the standard of excellence? Drop your thoughts and predictions down in the comments below. We love reading your takes. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the intersection of sports and culture, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to Pitch Report, and ring the notification bell so you never miss our tactical and historical breakdowns. We have an exciting lineup of videos coming your way exploring the biggest stories in world football. Let us know in the comments what other sports stories or club histories we should cover next, and which country's soccer culture fascinates you the most. Share your ideas, and let's keep the conversation going. Until next time, I'm the host of Pitch Report, reminding you that there is always a deeper game happening on the pitch. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.